Hello and welcome to Everyday Petrolhead. I'm your host Terrence Anderson and welcome to my channel. So I know a lot of people make jokes about certain car brands and manufacturers, and today I'm finishing up doing a repair on my wife's car. It's a 2009 Ford Explorer, and a lot of people always say, Fords are found on road dead, fix or repair daily, but rather than me do a DIY on the whole car itself, because it's going to be a lot of work and I don't feel like filming all of this. There's so many videos on how to replace what's broken. But I wanted to kind of a quick talk about brands and issues. And I think something that people have is a misconception about how most cars are. I mean, the reality is if you don't maintain the vehicle, you're going to have problems. That's just what it is. You can't just buy a car and, I put the oil in and it's okay. Like, that's not how that works. My wife's car is, again, like I said, her Ford Explorer. It has 231,000 miles. Now everybody says, Ford found on road dead, fix or repair daily, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Let's not talk about cars that are fix or repair daily. The reality is, we've had very few issues with this car in the miles that we've had it. And this is one of the bigger problems that's ever come up, and it's the water pump. The water pump seal leaks. It's a wear and tear item. Eventually it's gonna wear out. It's a moving part. But it made it 200,000 miles plus before it decided to go out. Let's think about that for a second. This is a vehicle that everybody considers is a car that you need to repair constantly, yet we've rarely worked on this car. If you've actually watched my channel, you see that I spend more time on that thing than I do on this thing. And I think before the video is over, I'll probably count up all the actual repairs we've ever done on her car. All right, so it's out, and what you have here on the left is the old water pump, and this is the new unit that's gonna go in. And it came out of down here, all the way down here. It was mounted in this general area with about 12 bolts. Ford did not want this to come off. It actually came off pretty easily once I got going, but it was a bit of a pain in the butt. The coolant thermostat housing sits right on top of it, so it makes it a little bit hard to get to. Also, they used a metal gasket, which I guess makes sense at the time. That was the technology of the time. So it doesn't look like the gasket failed. Although when I look at the pump itself, it looks like it just wore out over time. As you can see from the back here of this one, it's rusted and corroded. And of course, the new one doesn't look like that. It's all nice and clean and neat. There's no sign of corrosion or wear in the valleys. Let me just put it down for a second. Pick it up this way instead. There's no sign of corrosion in the valleys or where the water flows. Whereas on this one, you could see where the corrosion built up and did some damage. And you can kind of see some watermarks that show where the water may have came out, even along here. So maybe the gasket did fail, but it might have been because of buildup on the inside pushing on it. And if I flip this over, you can see all this runoff. This is where all the water was coming out and coming down, and it was dripping from underneath the actual bearing that separates it there. And this is, I believe if I'm correct, this is called a weep hole. If it was a little too much fluid, I think it starts to come out here. But this was like, you pour in 2 gallons, it came out the next day or the day after. So way more than what a weep hole would normally do. This is more like just the pump failed. Now, I can't really be mad considering this is a 230,000 mile pump. It's made it that far before it finally decided to give way. So yeah, the new one's gonna go in a moment, and the wife will be back on the road. Now, arguably this is annoying, but because the new gasket is basically a piece of paper of some sort in comparison to the metal gasket from the old one, I was tempted to put the old one back on when what happened. inevitably, because the new gasket is basically a piece of paper. Right about there, it tore as I was trying to fit it onto the car properly. But luckily I have RTV, and RTV makes gaskets. So what I'm now doing is I'm going to use the RTV to mount and bond the actual gasket to the metal first. Then I'm going to cut the excess on the inside so that nothing gets in and gums up the actual pump when it's functioning. So we're going to let this sit for about 45 minutes for it to cure. And then once it's set, then I can trim the excess and then mount it onto the car, and then let it sit overnight, and then it should be good to go in the morning. In the morning, I'll put the fluids back in. All right, so the excess RTV has been cut away, and it's gonna dry overnight even more, but right now it's already pretty dry. It'll cure fully, and I'm going to go ahead and bolt it onto the car, and then we'll go to the next step. And just like that, she's back together. The new pump is down there. It's kind of hard to see, but it's all the way down there. And the coolant thermostat is back on top of it. Ironically, this was the other major issue that we've had. Every issue we've had with this car that was a big issue, that was a wear and tear item and a big issue, was a coolant problem. And the last time it was the coolant thermostat housing, which arguably is probably the cheapest made thing on this car, which is 2 pieces of plastics bolted and glued together. That's just bad design, but it works. It is what it is. That actually lasted about 180,000 miles before it went out, and the pump went out at 231,000. So Ford's unreliable? I don't know. I think the truth of the matter is, no matter the brand, as long as you care for the car, you shouldn't have these crazy issues. My wife and I bought this car with high mileage, and ever since we've owned it, we've changed the oil every 3,000 to 5,000 miles. I've always put full synthetic in. I've checked the coolant levels. I've checked the brake fluid levels. I've checked everything, power steering, on a constant basis. And you've seen the other videos of all the maintenance. By now, most Ford Explorers with well over 180,000 miles usually have blown their head gaskets. And it's not because the car is built poorly. It gets a bad rap. The reality is that people just don't maintain their cars. Like, how did we get to 230,000 miles and our head gaskets look perfect? I mean, the last mechanic that looked at our car at about 200,000 miles was very confused at how well the car drove and how good the engine looked. One of my friends took a ride with me in the car at 220,000 miles and was surprised at how well it accelerated. You know, granted, Ford detuned this 4.0 liter V6 Cologne engine to roughly 200 horsepower. Same motor in the Mustang V6, but in the Mustang it's dual overhead cam, so it gets a little bit more power. I wish I could do a head swap. I would love to do that, but that's a very pricey endeavor, so I don't think I'm gonna do that. When we bought the car, it was getting about 12 miles to the gallon, but because of our maintenance efforts, we're now getting 19 miles to the gallon. But yeah, I'll call this a win. And to be honest with you, I think as long as you take care of your car, it doesn't really matter the brand, as long as you take care of the car and you do the maintenance, probably even ahead of the book schedule, your car is gonna last. Now, arguably, we're pushing it at 230,000 miles. We're probably gonna keep it another 6 months before it's time to really get rid of it. But the facts remain that this could probably go another 50, 60,000, maybe more before it's really like, okay, it's done. So take care of your cars. That's all I have to say. If you like what I've been talking about, like, share, subscribe, and catch me next time on Everyday Petrolhead. Thanks.